The scent of fine silk and desperation was a perfume Evelyn Ashford knew intimately. It clung to the air of her Modiste shop, Madame Evie, a heady mixture of new beginnings and old ghosts. Here, in this sanctuary of her own making, she was not the ruined Miss Ashford, the girl cast out from the glittering ballrooms of London for a sin she did not commit alone. Here, she was Madame Evie, a name spoken with reverence and a touch of awe by the very women who had once shunned her. Outside, a persistent London drizzle blurred the world beyond the polished plate-glass window. Inside, all was sharp, focused, and exquisite. Bolts of fabric stood like soldiers of taste, deep emerald velvets, sprigged muslins as delicate as a sigh, and heavy duchesse satins that gleamed like frozen moonlight. It was a temple of fashion, and she was its high priestess. "No, Lady Davenport," Evelyn's voice was calm, a low murmur that commanded absolute attention. She stood behind the young, flustered debutante, her own reflection in the cheval glass a study in controlled elegance. At 28, her beauty was no longer the soft, blooming kind of her youth. It was sharper, honed by hardship into something more compelling. Her chestnut hair was swept into a severe, elegant chignon, and her gown of charcoal gray wool was unadorned, yet its cut was so flawless it whispered of an authority no lace or ribbon could confer. The pink tulle is a cliché. It screams, trying too hard. We want them to look, not to laugh. She met the girl's wide, anxious eyes in the mirror. You have the complexion for sapphire. It will make your eyes look like a stormy sea, and your hair will be spun gold against it. Trust me. It was not a request. Trust was the currency she traded in, hard-won and fiercely guarded. Lady Davenport, the girl's mother, seated on a plush velvet settee, nodded frantically. "Of course, Madame Evie. Whatever you think best." Evelyn gave a slight, satisfied nod, her long, clever fingers deftly pinning the sapphire blue silk at the girl's shoulder, transforming the drape of the fabric into a promise of breathtaking beauty. This was her power. She could take a plain, trembling girl and arm her for the marriage mart, making her feel invincible. She understood the armor that a perfectly fitted gown could provide, for she had needed such armor herself, once. The bell above the door chimed, a soft, silver sound. Her head seamstress, a capable woman named Mrs. Briggs, moved to attend to the new arrival, but Evelyn's gaze, sharp and always assessing, flickered towards the door and froze. The man who stood there, shaking the rain from his hat, was a ghost. Not a specter of fear, but one of a singular, painful kindness that had haunted the edges of her memory for a decade. Lord Alastair Finchley. Time, which had been so cruel to her, had been generous to him. The lean, earnest young man of 23 was now a man in his prime. His shoulders were broader beneath the expertly tailored greatcoat, his face etched with the confident lines of a man who moved through the world with inherent authority. But his eyes, a warm, steady hazel, were the same. They were the only eyes that had not looked at her with scorn or prurient curiosity on that fateful night, the night of the Harrington ball. The memory, sharp as a needle, pierced through her composure. The stifling heat of the library, the torn strap of her gown, the cruel, triumphant smile of Lord Waltham as he claimed she had lured him there. The crowd of faces, a sea of condemnation. And then Alastair Finchley, pushing his way to the front. His voice, clear and firm, cutting through the vicious whispers. "This is not right. Listen to her." No one had listened. Not to her and not to him. His defense had been a lone candle in a vast, dark hall, quickly snuffed out by the gale of scandal. But she had never forgotten its fleeting warmth. And now he was here, in her shop. Dampness from the London rain glistened on his coat, and his presence seemed to suck all the air from the room. Lady Davenport, recognizing a peer of the realm, tittered nervously. "Why, Lord Finchley? What a surprise!" Alastair's gaze swept the room, polite and impersonal, until it landed on Evelyn. There was no flicker of immediate recognition. Why would there be? The girl he had faintly defended was a wraith, a creature of gossamer and grief. The woman before him was carved from marble and resolve. "Lady Davenport," he said, his voice a pleasant baritone that nonetheless sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine. My apologies for the intrusion. I was told this is the establishment to visit for matters of taste. His eyes returned to Evelyn, a question in them. I am seeking Madame Evie. Evelyn felt the eyes of her clients upon her. She could not afford a scene. She could not afford for this man from her past to unravel the life she had so painstakingly woven. With a serenity she did not feel, she handed the pincushion to Mrs. Briggs. Please continue with the final fittings for Lady Davenport. I will attend to his lordship. She turned, her spine straight, and walked towards him. I am Madame Evie. How may I be of service, my lord? She saw the exact moment the pieces clicked into place in his mind. His eyes widened just a fraction. They traveled from the severe elegance of her chignon, down the lines of her stark gown, to her face, searching for the girl he had known. A dawning, stunned comprehension settled there. Evelyn. The name was a breath, barely audible. It was a name no one had called her in years. It belonged to the dead girl. It is Madame Evie to my clients, Lord Finchley, she said, her voice cool and smooth as the satin on her counters. Shall we speak in my office? She did not wait for an answer, turning and leading the way to a small, impeccably tidy room at the back of the shop. It held a mahogany desk, ledgers, and a single, perfect white orchid. A room of business, not of confidences. He followed, closing the door behind him, and the space suddenly felt impossibly small. The scent of him, of rain, sandalwood, and clean, male vitality, invaded her sanctuary. By God, he murmured, staring at her as if she were a miracle. Evelyn Ashford. They said you had left England. Gone to the continent. Or worse. The reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, she replied, taking her seat behind the desk, using it as a fortification. As for Evelyn Ashford, she is, for all intents and purposes, gone. What remains is the owner of this establishment. Now, what is it you require? A waistcoat in the latest style? I am afraid that is beyond my purview. A faint, bewildered smile touched his lips. You have done remarkably well for yourself. I had little choice, she said, the words clipped. Society offers few career paths for women like me. One adapts or one perishes. I chose to adapt. He had the grace to look chastened. He ran a hand through his damp, dark hair. I'm here about my sister, Charlotte. Evelyn remembered Charlotte Finchley. A small, quiet girl with enormous eyes, trailing after her brother. She would be of age now. She is to make her debut this season, Alistair continued, his gaze earnest, pleading in a way that was entirely disarming. Our parents are gone. It falls to me to see her settled. And she is terribly shy. The thought of the season fills her with dread. I need her to have every advantage. He leaned forward, his hands flat on her desk. I need you. Evelyn felt a cold, hard laugh bubble in her throat, but she suppressed it. The irony was too perfect, too cruel. The one man who had shown her a shred of decency now needed the skills of the very woman society had deemed indecent. You need me, she repeated, her tone flat. You need the notorious Miss Ashford to launch your innocent sister into the society that crucified me. Do you not see the absurdity, Lord Finchley? The potential for disaster. I see the most talented modiste in London, he countered, his gaze intense. A woman who understands the game better than anyone because she was its victim. You know how to make a girl stand out, how to give her confidence. I am not asking for myself, Evelyn. I am asking for Charlotte. She has no mother, no guide. She is fragile. Fragile. The word hung in the air between them. Evelyn had been fragile once. The world had shattered her. She had gathered the pieces and reforged herself into something stronger, but the cracks were still there, visible only to her. My services are exceptionally expensive, she said, retreating into the safety of commerce. Money is no object. Of course it isn't, she said, a trace of bitterness seeping through her polished facade. It never is for your kind. Until it comes to paying the true price for a mistake. He flinched. Evelyn, about that night. We will not speak of that night, she cut him off, her voice like shards of ice. It is a closed chapter. If I agree to this, This endeavor, it will be a business arrangement. Nothing more. You will pay my fee, and I will provide your sister with a wardrobe that will make her the toast of the season. But you will do exactly as I say. You will trust my judgment implicitly, and you will never, ever mention the past again. Do you understand? He looked at her for a long moment, his hazel eyes searching hers. He saw the fortress she had built around herself, the cold pride, the unyielding strength. He saw the woman, not the girl. I understand, he said quietly. And I agree. Very well, Evelyn said, picking up a pen and opening a ledger. She would not look at him. She could not. His presence was a key, threatening to unlock a box of memories she had sealed shut a lifetime ago. Bring Miss Finchley tomorrow at 10. And Lord Finchley? Yes. Welcome to Maison de Evie, she said, finally meeting his gaze, her own as hard and brilliant as diamonds. Where we make dreams come true. For a price. Charlotte Finchley was, as her brother had said, fragile. She entered the shop the next morning like a fawn stepping into a clearing, all wide, apprehensive eyes and a trembling lower lip. She was pretty in a soft, unremarkable way, with her brother's hazel eyes and a cloud of light brown hair. Her gown was expensive but fussy, a confection of too many ribbons and flounces that overwhelmed her slight frame. Madame Evie, Alistair said, his hand a steadying presence on his sister's back. This is Charlotte. Evelyn surveyed the girl with a critical, professional eye. She saw the potential beneath the poor sartorial choices. The fine bone structure, the slender neck, the innate grace that fear was currently stifling. Miss Finchley, Evelyn said, her tone not unkind, but not warm. This was work. We have much to do. Come. For the next 2 hours, Evelyn worked. She had Charlotte stand on a low dais while she and Mrs. Briggs brought out fabrics, holding them up to the girl's face, assessing how the light fell. She dismissed pastels as insipid, declared yellows and oranges vulgar for her complexion, and settled on a palette of deep jewel tones and sophisticated neutrals. A rich claret for her first ball. A gown of seafoam green, not the childish pastel, but the deep, mysterious shade of the ocean depths. A walking dress of the finest dove-gray wool, cut with a severity that would make her look intelligent, not drab. It's so plain, Charlotte whispered, looking at the sketch Evelyn swiftly executed of the gray walking dress. Elegance is often mistaken for plainness by the untrained eye, Evelyn replied without looking up. We are not aiming for pretty. We are aiming for unforgettable. You are a Finchley. You must carry yourself with the authority of your name, not the desperation of a girl trying to catch a husband. The blunt words made Charlotte blush, but she also straightened her shoulders slightly. Alistair watched from a corner, silent and absorbed. Evelyn was intensely aware of his gaze, a physical weight on her back as she moved, measured, and pinned. She could feel the ghost of his past kindness and the stark reality of his present need. It was a dissonance that set her teeth on edge. During a moment when Mrs. Briggs took Charlotte to look at silks, Alistair approached Evelyn. You are a marvel with her, he said quietly. She hasn't trembled once in the last half hour. I am not coddling her, Evelyn said, keeping her eyes on her sketchbook. The world will not coddle her. My job is to make her strong, not to reassure her that her weakness is acceptable. Is that what you had to do? The question was soft, dangerous. Become strong. Evelyn's hand stilled. She lifted her eyes to his. I had no brother to pay a fallen woman to save me, Lord Finchley. I had only myself. The options were strength or starvation. I found the former more palatable. He winced. Must you always twist my words into a weapon? They are the only weapons I was allowed to keep, she said, turning away. Now, if you will excuse me, your sister requires my attention. The days turned into weeks. Under Evelyn's exacting tutelage, Charlotte began to change. It was not just the clothes, though the first fitting of the claret ball gown had brought a startled gasp of pleasure from the girl. It was the posture Evelyn drilled into her, the way to hold her head, how to enter a room, the art of the subtle, confident smile. Evelyn was not just building a wardrobe, she was building a persona. One afternoon, as Charlotte was practicing her walk in a new carriage dress, she stumbled, tearing the delicate lace at the cuff. Her face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so clumsy I've ruined it." Before Evelyn could respond with a sharp reprimand, Charlotte burst into tears. "I can't do this. They will all be looking at me, judging me. I shall say something stupid, or trip, or be a complete disgrace to Alistair." Evelyn stood, frozen for a second, the raw, familiar terror in the girl's voice echoing the ghost of her own. She saw herself at 18, terrified of a misstep, and then the catastrophic misstep that had been orchestrated for her. She waved Mrs. Briggs away and knelt before the sobbing girl, a gesture so foreign it felt like someone else was moving her body. "Listen to me," Evelyn said, her voice low and urgent. "They will judge you. That is what they do. It is their only sport. But you have a choice. You can let their judgment define you, or you can don your armor, this beautiful, formidable armor we are creating for you, and you can stare back. You are not just a girl, Charlotte. You are a Finchley. You are the sister of a man who would move heaven and earth for you. That is your power. Now, stop crying. Tears are a luxury we cannot afford. They ruin the complexion and solve nothing." Charlotte looked at her, tears still glistening on her lashes, but the hysteria had receded. She sniffled. Were you ever afraid?" Evelyn's breath caught. The girl had no idea what she was asking. She saw Alistair, who had just entered the shop unnoticed, freeze by the door, listening. "Yes," Evelyn said, the truth pulled from her like a confession. "I was afraid. And then I learned that fear is a cage. The key is not to let them see you rattle the bars." She stood, her moment of softness over. "Now we will mend the lace. It is a small tear. Easily fixed. Unlike a reputation." As she helped Charlotte from the dais, she caught Alistair's eye. His expression was unreadable, a complex mix of gratitude and something deeper, more painful. She quickly looked away. She was not doing this for his gratitude. This was a transaction. The first major event of the season was the Rutherford Ball. It was the opening salvo in the war of social advancement, and the air in Maison Evie was charged with a militant energy on the day of the ball. Charlotte was a nervous wreck, arriving for her final fitting with her maid in a state of high anxiety. "He will be there," she whispered to Evelyn as she was laced into the claret silk gown. "Who?" Evelyn asked, her mouth full of pins. "Lord Waltham's son Henry," Charlotte said, her cheeks flushing. "Alistair says he is a rogue, but he is so handsome." The name was a bucket of ice water down Evelyn's spine. The man who had destroyed her. The father was a villain, and the son, it seemed, was poised to continue the tradition. She had to force her hands to remain steady. "A handsome rogue is still a rogue," Evelyn said, her voice tighter than usual. "And rogues prey on young ladies who are too eager to please. You will be civil, but you will not seek him out. Is that understood?" The final transformation was breathtaking. The claret gown, with its deceptively simple lines, was a masterpiece. It had a neckline that was just daring enough, sleeves that tapered to points over her wrists, and a skirt that fell in heavy, luxurious folds. It made Charlotte's skin glow and her eyes sparkle. She looked not like a debutante, but like a young queen. When Alistair arrived to collect her, he stopped dead in the doorway. His eyes filled with an emotion so raw and proud that Evelyn had to look away, a strange ache in her chest. "Charlotte," he breathed, "you are magnificent." "It is all Madame Evie's doing," Charlotte said, beaming. Alistair's gaze shifted to Evelyn. "Thank you," he said, and the words were laden with a meaning that went far beyond the gown. Evelyn merely inclined her head. "See that she remembers her posture. And her dance card. Do not let her fill it with frivolous young men who have nothing to recommend them but a title." That night, alone in her rooms above the shop, Evelyn could not sleep. She pictured the ball, the lights, the music, the whispers. She pictured Charlotte, a jewel in her claret silk, and Alistair, watching over her. And she pictured Henry Waltham, a serpent in their garden. She felt a proprietary dread that unnerved her. This was not her world anymore. These were not her people. And yet, She was tied to their fate by silken threads of her own making. The following morning, Charlotte arrived at the shop, her face radiant. It was a triumph. Everyone asked about my gown. And Alistair was so proud. Even Henry Waltham asked for a dance. Evelyn's heart sank. And did you grant it? I did, Charlotte said, her eyes dreamy. He was so charming. Before Evelyn could issue a warning, the shop bell chimed with violent force. The door slammed open, and Lady Fitzwilliam, one of London's most notorious gossips and a close friend of the Dowager Lady Waltham, stood there, her face a mask of fury. She pointed a gloved finger directly at Evelyn. I knew it, she shrieked, her voice cutting through the serene atmosphere of the shop. I knew there was something familiar about that name. Evie, it is you. Evelyn Ashford, the Harrington harlot. The word, ugly and brutal, hung in the air. Mrs. Briggs gasped. Charlotte stared, confused and frightened. How dare you? Lady Fitzwilliam continued, advancing. How dare you lay your soiled hands on an innocent girl? To think Lord Finchley brought his pure sister here, to you. It is an outrage. I shall see this place shut down. I shall see you run out of this city. Evelyn stood perfectly still, the old shame and terror rising in her throat like bile. This was what she had feared. This was the past, come to collect its debt. But then, a strange calm descended upon her. She had faced worse than Lady Fitzwilliam. She had faced total ruin and survived. Lady Fitzwilliam, Evelyn said, her voice cold and clear, carrying through the shop. You are disturbing my peace and offending my clients. You will lower your voice or you will leave. I will not. Everyone shall know what you are. What I am, Evelyn said, taking a step forward, her gaze like steel, is a successful businesswoman. What you are is a woman who makes a living from the misfortunes of others. Now, you will leave my establishment. Immediately. Just then, Alistair strode into the shop. He had clearly been alerted by the commotion. His face was like thunder. Lady Fitzwilliam, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Is there a problem? This woman. Lady Fitzwilliam spluttered. She is the finest modiste in London, Alistair interrupted, his gaze unwavering. And you are insulting a friend of the Finchley family. Any slander you speak against Madame Evie, I will consider a slander against my house. Do I make myself perfectly clear? The silence in the shop was absolute. Lady Fitzwilliam looked from Alistair's furious, determined face to Evelyn's icy composure. She had not expected this. She had expected Alistair to be horrified, to recoil in disgust. Instead, he was standing as her defender. Muttering curses, Lady Fitzwilliam turned on her heel and stormed out, the bell jangling wildly in her wake. The shop was left in a stunned silence. Charlotte was pale and trembling. Mrs. Briggs looked as if she might faint. Alistair turned to Evelyn. Are you all right? His concern was her undoing. It was too much. The attack, the old wounds ripped open, his unwavering defense. It was a maelstrom of emotions she could not process. Get out, she whispered. Evelyn, get out, she cried, her composure shattering. All of you, get out. She fled to her office, slamming the door shut, leaning against it as the sobs she had suppressed for a decade finally broke free. She was no longer the formidable Madame Evie. She was just Evelyn Ashford, the fallen woman, alone and terrified. A soft knock came at the door. Evelyn. It was Alistair. Please. Let me in. Go away. I will not. She didn't have the strength to fight him. She unlocked the door and turned her back to him, walking to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. He entered, closing the door softly behind him. I am so sorry. For what? She asked, her voice thick with tears. For defending me? Again? It did not work the first time, Alistair. It will not work now. She will talk. They will all talk. My business, my life, it will be ruined. Again. No, he said, coming to stand behind her. It will not. I will not allow it. She laughed, a broken, hollow sound. You are not a god, Alistair. You cannot stop the tide of gossip. "I can damn it with the truth," he said, his voice low and intense. She turned to face him. "The truth? What truth? The truth that Waltham lied? No one cared then. Why would they care now?" "Because I have proof." The words hung in the air, so shocking they stole her breath. "What?" "For years," he said, his gaze steady on hers, "I have carried the guilt of that night. I knew you were innocent. I knew it in my bones. But I was young and my voice was not loud enough. After you were gone, I made it my business to find out the truth. Waltham's valet, a man with a conscience and a grudge, confessed it to me on his deathbed 2 years ago. Waltham had boasted of it. He had torn your gown himself, planning the entire scene to punish your father for a business slight and to amuse himself with your ruin. I have a signed affidavit." Evelyn stared at him, her mind reeling. The world tilted on its axis. For 10 years, she had built her life on the foundation of her own perceived foolishness, her shame. And all along, this man, this one man, had not only believed her but had sought to clear her name. "You have had this for 2 years?" she whispered, disbelief warring with a wild, painful hope. "I tried to find you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I hired investigators. They said you had disappeared in Paris. I thought I had lost the chance to ever give you this." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a folded, sealed document. "This is yours. To do with as you wish." She took it with trembling hands. It felt impossibly heavy. This single piece of paper could restore everything she had lost. Her name. Her honor. "Why?" she asked, her eyes swimming with tears she no longer bothered to hide. "Why did you do this?" "For me." Alistair took a step closer. He reached out, and with a tenderness that shattered her completely, he brushed a tear from her cheek. His touch was a brand, a promise. "Because," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "that night, I did not just defend a girl I believed was innocent. I lost the girl I was already in love with. And I have spent every day since regretting that I was not strong enough, loud enough, or brave enough to keep her." The confession hung between them, vast and profound. All the walls Evelyn had built, all the armor she had forged, crumbled to dust. The proud, cynical Madame Evie vanished, and in her place stood Evelyn Ashford, seen, known, and beloved. He loved her. He had always loved her. She looked from the document in her hands to the man before her. The truth could give her back her past. But he was offering her a future. "Alistair," she breathed. And then he kissed her. It was not a kiss of passion, but of reclamation. A sealing of a vow made a decade ago, finally fulfilled. It tasted of tears, of truth, and of a second chance she had never dared to dream of. The scandal, when it broke, was of a different sort entirely. It was not Madame Evie who was ruined, but the late Lord Waltham's reputation. Alistair, with the cool efficiency of a statesman, managed the affair. He did not shout the truth from the rooftops. He shared the affidavit quietly with key figures in society, the ones who held the most influence and, crucially, the ones who had daughters. The story of Waltham's villainy spread like a controlled burn, consuming the old lies in its path. Evelyn Ashford was not a fallen woman. She was a wronged one. And in the perverse logic of the ton, the latter was a position of fascinating, tragic nobility. Her business did not suffer, it skyrocketed. She became the most sought-after modiste in history, a living legend. Women now clamored not just for her designs, but for her story, for a piece of her resilience. Charlotte's season, freed from the shadow of potential scandal, was a brilliant success. She blossomed fully under the combined care of her brother and Evelyn, her confidence now genuine, not manufactured. And when the young, earnest, and thoroughly vetted Lord Hemmings proposed, she accepted with joy, having wisely lost all interest in the roguish Henry Waltham. The final ball of the season was held at the Finchley estate. It was a magnificent affair, a celebration of Charlotte's engagement. And for the first time in 10 years, Evelyn Ashford was not hiding in the shadows. She was a guest. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, not as a servant or a hidden observer, but as an invited lady. She wore a gown of her own design, a deep, vibrant blue that was the color of a midnight sky just before the dawn. It was a gown of victory. Alistair found her there, his eyes shining with a love that still made her breath catch. "You are the most beautiful woman in this room," he murmured, offering her his arm. "I believe that is my line," she said, a genuine, unburdened smile gracing her lips for the first time in a decade. "Dance with me, Evelyn," he said. It was not a request, but a promise. And there, in the center of the glittering ballroom, under the light of 1,000 candles, the man who had defended her danced with the woman she had become. There were no whispers of scorn, only looks of admiration and respect. The past had been redeemed, not forgotten, but transformed into the foundation of their future. He led her onto a terrace, away from the music and the crowd. The night air was cool and sweet. He took both her hands in his. "Evelyn Ashford," he said, his voice steady and sure. "You once told me that this was a business arrangement. Nothing more. But my heart has never recognized that contract. I love you. I have loved you since I was a foolish boy, and I will love you until I am an old man. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for those lost years." Tears of pure, unadulterated joy filled her eyes. This was not a rescue. It was a partnership. A union of two people who had found their way back to each other through a wilderness of pain and prejudice. "Yes," she said, the single word carrying the weight of her forgiveness, her love, and her hope. "Yes, Alistair. I will marry you." As he kissed her, under the watchful stars, Evelyn knew that the girl she had been was not gone. She was a part of her, the vulnerable core that had been tempered in fire and was now, finally, safe. She was Evelyn Ashford, Madame Evie, and soon, Lady Finchley. She was a woman of silk and scorn, of resilience and love, and her story was only just beginning.